Hello class, welcome to our unit on material monism. I'm going to be using this handout, Material Monism, to get us going. Remember, we're in the area of philosophy that asks the question, what is real or what is eternal? Metaphysics. So we're doing metaphysics. I'm going to try something a little bit different today. I have my iPad and I want to use it as a whiteboard. Let's see if it's going to work. Oh yeah, it's going to work. So if you recall, we were using this square of opposition, and we had all is eternal in this corner, and only some is eternal in this corner. And I think that went off the screen, but you know what I'm talking about. So we had these two options, and we're going to start looking at each of the positions under all is eternal and only some is eternal. We're going to start with material monism. So material monism is our first position in metaphysics that we're going to think about. So let's go back to the handout. Material monism is the ontological position that says that there is only one kind of substance or being. This is called monism. Monism means one thing. So one thing exists, it's extended, and it's not conscious. So we're going to have to find a way to explain consciousness in material terms. So there's one thing that exists, it's matter, it's extended, it's not conscious, and it is forever. Forever in the past, forever in the future. I also want to remind you that one of the features or characteristics of eternality is that it is independent, also self-existing, self-explaining, and self-maintaining. So whatever is eternal has to have those properties. So if matter is eternal, matter has to be independent, self-existing, self-explaining, and self-maintaining. So let's look at the handout. This substance is eternal. According to materialist cosmology, all phenomenon can and must be explained in physical or material terms. And then it says, contrast this with spiritual monism, dualism, and theism. Those are the other positions that are remaining on this square. Those other positions hold that there also exists something non-physical, spirit, consciousness. So remember, spiritual monism says that all that exists is spirit. Matter doesn't exist. It's an illusion, or we're making a mistake when we think matter exists. Dualism says matter and spirit are co-eternal. And theism says some spirit, God, is eternal and everything else is non-eternal or temporal. So we'll be looking at each of those positions, but today we're going to start with material monism. Point 2, material lifestyles differ according to social, economic background, degree of rational consistency, and personality disposition. Basically, anybody from any walk of life, any profession, can be a material monist. Now, material monism is equivalent to naturalism. All that exists is nature. I want to go back to the iPad and sketch out what this looks like in terms of a world and life view. Remember the house we've been talking about? So let's draw the house for material monism. And we're going to talk about how if you make certain epistemological assumptions, remember this bottom layer is the ground upon which you build your epistemology. Oftentimes, usually, I'll say, let me get that out of the way. Material monism begins with what's called methodological naturalism, which means the method we're going to use is that all that we can observe is nature. So this is also called empiricism. Remember that word, empiricism? Here, let's choose red. Empiricism is the view that all that we could know is through the senses: seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. Now, if you recall the history lesson I asked you to watch, the first philosophers, Thales, Anaximander, Anaximenes, were empiricists, and they started with the senses, and they came to the conclusion that all that existed was what could be sensed. So that assumption usually is paired with the assumption called metaphysical naturalism. Metaphysical naturalism. And metaphysical naturalism says that all that exists is nature. We'll call that material monism. All right, material monism is that assumption. All that exists is nature. Now, since something must be eternal, and when we start with matter and all that exists is matter, then it seems as though matter would have to be eternal in this view. Now, what does the rest of this house look like up here? If you go back to the handout, let me take you there. We'll look at some points, and I'm going to skip ahead a little bit to number 4. Now, number 3 is the history lesson that I asked you to watch. I won't go over that again now, but I will go over number 4. So consider the following: the origin of the cosmos, the origin of life, the destiny of man, human equality, the origin of thought, the good, freedom, rationality, political authority. All right, so let's talk about that. Now, I'm going to pause this for a second and put this on the iPad, and then we're going to fill it in together. Hi, I'm back with the view from the iPad, and I don't know if I'll be able to fit in everything I'd like to say about this, so you might want to take notes. But I'm calling this a material monist worldview, and I've put each of the points on here. I've added number 10, but let's think about this. If all that we have to work with is matter, and matter is eternal, then how do we explain the origin of the cosmos? Where did the universe come from? What's the story they tell us? Ordinarily, the story they tell us is that it came from the Big Bang, right? The Big Bang. I don't think I'm going to be able to fit everything in here. You'll have to take notes. The origin of life on Earth. Where did life come from? Usually they have this story of evolution, right? So life on Earth is evolved from some non-living material, ordinarily. The destiny of man, what happens when you die? The story is that when you're dead, you're dead. That's the end of you, right? Now, maybe some try to make it sound nice. You become trees in nature, right? But, you know, that's when you're dead, you're dead. Are humans equal? We're on this one now. Human equality. Well, think about this. If we have the story of evolution, and evolution is progressing based on the survival of the fittest, wouldn't that mean some people are more fit than others? How would you get human equality? What would be the basis of human equality? The origin of thought. What is thinking? Well, it would have to be your brain, right? So in material monism, we're going to have to locate thinking in the brain. And remember, thinking is concepts, judgments, and arguments. So how are concepts in your brain? This is going to be one of the major objections to material monism. If all that we have to exist is matter and all you have is this life, what is the point? What is the goal of life? What is the good? It's probably something like pleasure, do what you like, whatever makes you happy, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. Okay, now let's think about this. If human beings are merely material, are you free? What is the basis of human freedom? Is there such a thing as free will? Do other material beings have freedom? Or are we all determined by the laws of physics, biology, the environment? So it does seem like a material monist would have to say that we are determined or determined by the laws of physics, minimally. What is human rationality? Think about the laws of thought. What are they? Where do they come from? Either they're made by humans or they're something that's part of our evolution. And if they're part of our evolution, then the laws of thought evolve as we evolve, which means they're not fixed, which means knowledge isn't fixed either. So this is probably why we get skepticism with material monism, because rationality and the laws of thought are not fixed and nothing is permanent. All material things are in flux and change. What about political authority? If all that exists is material, who gets to lead? Well, probably the fittest, right? Those who have the most power get to be the ones who lead us politically. He who has the biggest guns rules the world. Might makes right, right? So these are, this is the basis of political authority in material monism. And the last one I have here is other religions. How would a material monist make sense of the other positions that are also on the square of opposition? What would a material monist say about a spiritual monist or a dualist or a person who believes in God? They would probably have to say that they are disillusioned, they're believing a fiction, maybe they can't handle reality, so they invent meaning that's, you know, merely subjective to get them through this life because they can't face reality, a reality of life without God, a reality of just the cosmos, all that ever is, was, or will be. So this is the material monist worldview. It starts with empiricism, and this empiricism often leads to skepticism, and then we have material monism here, or materialism, and then we get these features stemming from those assumptions. So you can kind of see how reason is used to construct a coherent world and life view. The question is now, why would anyone believe this is true about reality? And is it actually coherent, or is it just seemingly coherent? Meaning, does this world and life view match reality? And can we ever know that? So let's talk for a moment about why someone might be attracted to this view. The one I hear the most is that it fits with science. It fits with science, and maybe atheism is attracted to this view, or has to go this way, because if you don't have God and you're not a Buddhist, then this is the nearest alternative. So atheism usually is an objection to theism, or belief in God, so no God. So here's a view without God, or a human soul, or anything spirit, or transcendent, or non-material. Atheism usually doesn't have a positive argument, but is a negative argument. It argues against the existence of God, usually by saying that the traditional proofs for God don't work, and there's this whole problem of evil. If God's all good and all powerful, why is there evil? And yeah, it's an argument that is contradictory to theism. So this is the contradiction, one of them, to theism. Now, material monism or atheism usually doesn't deal with dualism, Plato, or spiritual monism. They just argue against theism. So I'm not sure the material monist has really grounded their position in reason and argument such that the opposite is impossible. And the opposite includes material monism, spiritual monism, dualism, and theism, not just theism. So there are some, I guess, attractive pieces to this view. It accords with science, or what we think is science, or maybe science is scientism and it's assuming this very worldview, which it should be proving. And yeah, it's a popular view right now. It's been popular for the past 150 to 200 years. So if you recall the history of philosophy, philosophy begins with material monism, it runs into problems, and the modern period, the late modern period in philosophy goes back to material monism. And right now it's the dominant view in the academy. The question is, does it have problems? Yes, it does have problems, and that's what we'll look at next. What are some of the arguments against material monism? All right, that's what we'll look at in the next videos.